guest, Ms. Avantika Chawla from the Child's Right Clinic at Jindal Global Law School. Ma'am is an assistant professor at the Jindal Global Law School and an assistant director of the Child's Right Clinic. With a professional start at a boutique law firm, her passion for children's rights led her to extensive advocacy and a legal representation from child sexual abuse victims. She holds an advanced LLM in international children's rights from Leiden University, equipping her with a global perspective to enhance her teaching and research in the field. The Child Rights Clinic at Jindal Global Law School is a part of clinical legal education program along with the Criminal Justice Clinic, Environmental Law Clinic, and the Law and Marginalization Clinic. Established under Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, Center for Clinical Legal Education, this clinic focuses on experimental learning and community engagement, providing students with practical insights into child rights issues and legal advocacy. I think Anshita can explore more about this.
Hello, good morning. So I Anshita, I'm the second speaker in today's interview. So continuing with from where Asta has left, the Child Right Clinic has been at the forefront of child protection and legal advocacy from 2021 to 2025. As an integral component of university's commitment to clinical legal education, the clinic has harnessed synergy of academic rigor and practical legal interventions to address the complex challenges faced by children in legal and societal spectrum. The, though through a blend of innovative legal practices, community engagement, and education initiatives, the clinic has not only provided the immediate legal support to vulnerable children but also contributed to the broader discourse on child rights through impactful research and advocacy. Their work over these years has spanned dimensions of child protection, including the development of resources like Adolescent Friendly Guide to POCSO and a comprehensive analysis of victim compensation schemes across different states. The clinic's approach has been deeply collaborative, including multiple stakeholders such as legal professionals, psychologists, NGOs, and the children themselves to ensure that the interventions are both empathetic and effective. Ma'am, before we begin with the interview, for the benefit of the viewers, we like to speak a bit about our initiative, Darpan, meaning mirror in English, is a platform that we are trying to build which aims to highlight ground realities and societal circumstances through the lens of law. Through the lens of law, students engage in legal aid and awareness work. Our initiative focuses on bridging the gap between legislative intent and actual implementation, showcasing real stories and featuring expert insights. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I request Astha to begin with the interview.
Before starting with the questions, ma'am, I must say, I think this is something very unique that JGLS has come up with, like to have limbs within the legal aid clinic itself that are focusing on specific aspects. That's why we are very keen to know more about what the legal right clinic does. So, my first question to you will be, in what ways does the Child's Right Clinic measure and assess the impact of its various initiatives on the protection and advocacy of children's rights?
Right. So the child rights clinics, and of course, like you rightly said, the child rights clinic is one of the clinics at JGLS, and like you rightly pointed out, we have multiple clinics that are running, and all of our clinics are faculty led, and our clinics are headed by Professor Deepika Jain, who is the Vice Dean of Clinical Legal Education, and we have immense support from the university, both from our JGLS Executive Dean, Professor Srijit, as well as our Vice Chancellor, Professor Raj. And it is because of them that we are able to do all of the work that we do. Um, with regards to how do we measure the impact of the work that we do, I think in terms of advocacy, that's a really hard one to do, right? Because I think policy and advocacy work is something that is so ongoing. So I feel that if we are able to collectively work with the larger child rights community and effectuate change or influence any kind of policy, that's how we know that what we're doing is working, right? So that's one thing with regards to the policy and advocacy. With regards to our intervention work, it's everyday court work. So I feel that that one is slightly easier to measure, right? So, for example, just last month in January. Well, now it's last month, but just right now in January, we were able to get the first ever interim compensation in a POXO case in Sonipat. And we've worked really hard over the last 7 months to sort of advocate for our client and to be able to get this compensation. So I feel like with intervention work and legal literacy work, it's much easier, right? However, with policy and advocacy work, I think that you have to look at what is the kind of long term impact you're able to make. I think another really important thing for us is also to inculcate, to actually not even inculcate, more mainstream child rights in legal education. And I feel that with the support of our university, Professor Deepika, Professor Srijit, and Professor Raj, we have been able to effectively do that at Jindal. So I think that there are sort of a few parameters, right? And I think these are some of them.
Okay, so I think firstly, I would like to say that from your answer, I got to know that there is some real life impact that has been created by your work and the work of the LIMP under the Legal Aid Clinic of JGLS. And because of that, I like, even when we work for our Legal Aid and Awareness Committee at NLUJ, I feel like partnerships, they have a big impact on how the legal aid cell is going to run throughout the year. So, could you perhaps discuss more about how your partnerships with organizations like iPro Bono have enhanced your clinic's work?
Right. I think in order to work in any particular field, right, it's really important that you work with the movement. So I think a very integral part of the work that we do is to provide support to organizations that are already working on the ground. So even before we started our direct intervention work, since the time that we began our work post COVID in 2022, we have been partnering with child rights organizations across the country, mainly Delhi-based child rights organizations, right? So we've worked with iPro Bono, we work with Council to Secure Justice, who we also offer a clinical legal program with. So our child rights clinical course on child sexual abuse in the law is offered in collaboration with Council to Secure Justice. And we've also worked with other organizations such as Huck Center for Child Rights, Plain Jar, YP Foundation, amongst the course of the products, amongst the length and breadth of the work that we do. So with regards to collaborations, I think, like I said, it's really important that we work with the movement. So I think one of the first things that we began, where we really began our intervention work, was actually to provide support to organizations like Council to Secure Justice and iPro Bono with their day-to-day work. Because as NGOs and as community-based organizations, everyone does have limited resources. And having worked in the development sector, I know how integral it is to be able to provide that support. So, for example, with Council to Secure Justice, with our collaborative clinical program that we have with them, we are able to provide them drafting support on cases that they have. We provide them also research support, any support that they may need with regards to their advocacy initiatives. And similarly with and with Council to Secure Justice, as a part of our clinical program, we also do a lot of research and project work. For example, we're working on a project on tracking the trends of cases of consensual sexual activity across 3 high courts. So we're able to do all of this work because we're working with organizations that are working on the ground,
Mhm.
right? And it's important to have like more of a holistic perspective, right? So I think like that is something that's really helpful. With other organizations like iPro Bono, we're able to provide them support on a need basis, and we're also collaborating with them on some other research work that we're doing. We're creating a case repository of POXO cases. So that's something that's been really integral. So I feel that the things that organizations may not necessarily have the bandwidth to do, right? But those are really important things that also need to be done. I feel that that's another way the clinic is able to step in. And I think it would be amiss if I did not also mention our collaboration with the YP Foundation. In 2022, we set out to create this adolescent friendly guide to POXO. And,
Mhm.
we created the guide, in 2023. In 2023, later in the year, we had a consultation with stakeholders, psychologists, lawyers, social workers and support persons working on the ground. And what we realized was that the need of what children needed and what we'd created was different, right? So then we were able to collaborate with the YP Foundation, and they brought in all of their expertise in working on comprehensive sexuality education across the country, and we were able to co-create this product with them. And what that also helps us do is to ensure that the work that we're doing is not disconnected from what is happening on the ground, and we work with the movement to ensure that we're adding to the work that is being done and not taking away from it. So I think that is where, collaborating with organizations that are already a part of the movement is really important. And I think it's also equally important to collaborate with the stakeholders in the government who are already doing the same work that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So that you can add more to their work. For example, we very effectively have been able to collaborate with our Sonipat District Legal Services Authority. The learned secretary of the authority has been extremely supportive, and we've been able to collaborate with them. I act as a resource person for a lot of the POXO work that they do, such as legal literacy camps that they're doing in villages across Sonipat. And I also work effectively with the District Child Protection Unit to provide trainings from time to time. So I think working with the government stakeholders is also equally important, so that you add to the work they're doing as well. And you can really bring in that rights based and trauma informed lens also to that work.
Yeah.
So I think like across the board collaboration, especially for a legal aid clinic, is extremely important to ensure that you're not losing sight of what is actually happening on the ground and you work with the movement.
Okay. So I think, ma'am, as you have mentioned, working at the ground level is very much important. And since I have joined the law school, I feel like there is so much that we have learned by being the part of the law school as well. And I think that's a very common feeling that not only people at JGLS, but people across the law school who are part of the educational program, they feel like that. But we also have to think about the people who are not able to receive such kind of education. So I'm really interested to know that what methods has the clinic used to make complex legal information easier to understand and more interesting for children and people without a legal background.
Right. And I think you're speaking to the demystification work that we do at the clinic, right? So
Yes.
I think, again, that really has, and especially with something like child rights, you cannot do this work without ensuring that you're catering to the community that you want to work with, which is children
Yeah.
and young persons. So for us, I think that is a very integral part of the work that we do. And we've worked on a few demystification materials. The one that we most extensively worked on is, of course, our adolescent friendly guide to POXO. And so, what we really want to do is take the law to children and adolescents to ensure that they know that they are the most important stakeholders,
Hmm.
in the entire movement. And I think children's right to participation is emphasized both in the UNCRC as well as the Juvenile Justice Act. But it's so important that we inculcate that in our everyday work as well. So, for example, for our adolescent-friendly guide to POXO, in when we after we had the initial consultation with stakeholders such as lawyers, psychologists, NGOs, etc. After we were actually done making our product, we also tested the product with about 60 odd adolescents to ensure that the product that we're creating is actually something that they can consume, right? So I think especially when you're creating child friendly and adolescent friendly material, I think it just takes a lot more work because I feel it's easier to break it down, right, for older persons. But when you're working with young persons, I think there is just so much that you have to keep in mind and also be cognizant of. So I feel that involving the community that you're working with and taking that bottom up approach is really important. So I think that just using all of those methods is how you can create effective demystification material. Now, in addition to that, in addition to creating material for children, we also think it's equally important to create resources for persons who may be working on the issue. And that's where we created
Yeah.
like our compendium of state legal services authority victim compensation plans, right? And similarly, to also really bring the law to to just really break down the law for everyone to be able to consume. For example, we did a breakdown of the Law Commission report on the age of consent. So I think all of those things are also equally important. And I think one really important method or mechanism to keep in mind as you're doing this work, especially as you want to engage with more and more young persons, I think is social media. So I think like really like disseminating through social media and ensuring that the information that you're putting out there is also equally updated there, I think is always such a great way to engage with people and to break down these complex legal issues into sort of simpler reels or posts. I think that makes it much easier.
Yeah, I think like you're completely right there because most of the time we have the right. Children, they have the right, but they are not able to understand ki, okay, we have this position to enforce it or implement it. So I think the work your clinic is doing is really going to help with that. I think Anshita can now carry forward with the rest of the questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your insights. So, with continuing with the today's interview, I would like to ask, and we are interested to know, like, considering the wide spectrum of work that child right clinics undertake. So, ma'am, how do you decide that which areas to focus on for advocacy and influencing law? Ma'am, can you please give me an example of how your advocacy has led to change in legal policies and practices?
Right. I think a really important way to do that is actually circling back to a question that Astha asked, which
Yeah.
is why do you work with collaborators, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I feel like if you work with the child rights community and the child rights activist movement, you know what it is that you need to do, right? I think it's important to also be a part of that movement and ensure that you're working in tandem with everyone, right? And like I said, with policy and advocacy, I think there is no direct way to see change, right?
Mm.
However, I think as long as you're working with the movement, you know that you will eventually get there. For example, just recent or not recently, more last year, NCPCR had taken out, NCPCR support guidelines for support persons, which were because of essentially a Supreme Court case called Bachpan Bachao Andolan versus Union of
Yeah.
India. Now, pursuant to that case, they took out these draft guidelines, and we were able to work with the community to know that what are the kind of inputs that they want to give, and we kind of ensured that our inputs were along the similar lines. So I think things like that one can always do to ensure that you're contributing to the larger work that the community is doing. And I think collaboration is really key here. Again,
Mhm.
similarly, we've been able to work with Council to Secure Justice was
Mm.
collating all of the comments on the draft general comment number 27 on access to justice. We also participated in that activity, and although we had already submitted comments on the draft general comment to the UNCRC directly, we also worked with CSJ, and we also submitted part of our comments to them. So I think like working with the communities where you can really be effective. And I think another really important thing with advocacy is to actually really work collaboratively with the community that you're working with as well, right? So I think really working with children by creating materials such as the adolescent friendly guide to POXO that we've created, I think that that's kind of been really effective in reaching out to the population that we want to work with. And also, working with, for example, the DCPCR. Uh, bit of disturbance at your end. Yeah, okay. So, for example, we also worked with the DCPCR on a petition that was unfortunately not filed. But, they were working with child rights organizations on decriminalization of consensual sexual activity under the POXO. And similarly, when we knew that there was a MP who was essentially going to submit comments to the IPC reform committee. So there as well, we were able to submit our comments on important issues. So I think those are some of the ways that you can work on policy change. And I think more than working on policy change, it's also equally important to work on effective implementation. So I think in terms of, collaborating with our local stakeholders to provide trainings and to also be a part of the local movement is really important, because that's where you can ensure that implementation actually takes
Mm.
place.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Looking at the legacy and the contribution and difference that Child Rights Clinic has made, we are interested to know, like, what are the main goals for the Child Rights Clinic over the next 5 years? Are there any new issues in child rights that you plan to address, or new approaches that you are interested to take on?
Right. I don't think there is any new approach that we intend to take. I think the clinic really wants to work with in Sonipat and in Haryana to work on implementation of what's already there. Because I feel that rather than thinking of creating new mechanisms and new laws and new policy, it's important to first implement what we already have. So I think a major goal for the clinic in the next, which I hope really does not take 5 years, is to set up an effective survivor support program to provide support to survivors of child sexual abuse, both in terms of legal support as well as psychosocial support. And in addition to that, of course, we want to continue to work with local authorities to for trainings, legal literacy, and also continue to work on policy and advocacy. But I think our main goal over the next 5 years will definitely be to create an effective survivor support program in Sonipat, which does not exist at this time. We also want to be able to work with children in conflict with the law. So we also want to begin to provide representation to children in conflict with the law, and work with the DLSA to also support that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It is truly very inspiring to know about your future plans and what you are going to plan in the next 5 years. So, this brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your insights and contributing to this important discussion. This was one of the four clinics interview and insights at JGLS. Stay tuned with Darpan at NLUJ to hear from other three clinics at JGLS as we continue to learn from this experience and perspective. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank
I think, like, on a personal note, I think I was very much able to resonate with the views that the Child's Legal Aid Clinic and personally, after speaking to you, have. And, like, I hope you're able to achieve whatever you want in the future because, as part of another legal aid clinic myself, it just really helps that there is some impact and change that is going out in the real world itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like that's what one aims to do, right?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We are very thankful for the interview because we think that if we combine all the aims and objective of all the legal aid and awareness committees across India, we'll be having some of the challenges of all the committees and we can take lessons from each of them. This is what we are trying to achieve from this series, that we combine all the interviews, we see how the legal aid clinics are facing the challenges in this field, in whatever field they work. Like, for example, we also face so many challenges when we work in any of the areas. So we just wanted to combine all these things so that other legal aid clinics who see who see the videos, they also know that how to overcome these challenges. As you have, yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
But you know what? I think that there's no question on that in your list of questions. I mean, if that is what you were trying to do, I think it would be good to have a question on that specifically. That what are the challenges or what are the obstacles that you faced in the
Yes,
implementation
ma'am.
of the work that you're doing?
Ma'am, just for example, Asta asked like how we can approach those kids. Then you were answering why the social media we can have that crowd to be attracted to the
But
same.
yeah, but I don't think that's the aim, right? I mean, that's just such a small part of the larger issue because, honestly, as legal aid clinics that are trying to work, there are so many other issues that come up. For example, a major one is funding,
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. That's true.
you know, because
True,
there's
true,
only
ma'am.
so much you can do without money.
Yes, ma'am. True.
So and honestly, we are so blessed at Jindal that our university really supports us. I mean, they've given us two lawyers, and I mean, it's
Hmm.
brilliant, but
Hmm.
like, still need so much more, right? To really
Hmm. True,
do
ma'am.
good work, such like get social workers, etc. So I feel that these are the things that you really should highlight, right?
Hmm.
I think like maybe going forward, or if you want, we can add the question if you're able to edit the video,
Yes, ma'am.
we
Sure.
add a question on what are the challenges that you face in the implementation of your work, because
Yes, ma'am.
I think that is what the main if that is the
Mm.
thing that you're trying to achieve through this series. And also with the other guests, like, it's great that everyone gets to talk about the work that they're doing, but I feel like it's important to highlight this if that's what we want to specifically work on.
Yes, ma'am, we can go ahead with the same question. I mean, the main thing is about the challenges. We have just identified some specific question related to your center, and we have curated that challenges into the questions itself. But we can have this like on the pointers also, if we can, if you are able to answer the same. Like, what are the pointers? If we can list the pointers, like the challenges that we face during the work that you do, it will be great, ma'am. We can edit the video.
Okay, cool. Let's just do that in a second.
Yes, ma'am.
I was also wondering, I do know that GNLU has a child rights clinic, and
Yes, ma'am.
have you been able to identify other law schools with child rights clinic? I think NLSIU has one, GNLU has one, and which other law school? Which other law school has a child rights clinic?
No, ma'am. I just know about the JNLU because we were in the contact with them recently, so got to know about the same.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Let's just quickly add this question, and then I'll go. I actually had another meeting at 11:30.
I'll keep it short. I'll just so I'll carry forward with another one of the questions, that is, since you have described so much about the groundwork that the clinic has been doing, and so many collaborative efforts have been taken up on your part, what are the challenges that the clinic faces on a daily basis to while it is trying to like spread awareness?
I think it's not just about spreading awareness. I think, there's so much more that the clinic does. But I think the first major challenge is actually to work with the community. Because I think to really gain the trust of the community is so important. And it's important that you're not just another person who's coming into, let's say, their space and their area and saying, you know what, we're going to do all of these 1 million things for you, right? Because I think then you create this sense of false hope, and then you're just another person who's passing through, right? So I think it's so important to engage with the community effectively and really have that bottoms up approach, wherein you're not infringing on the space that they have, and you're not working on issues that you want to work on, but rather than working on issues that what is the need of the community. For example, if I decide today that I want to only work on POXO in villages in Sonipat, that's all that I'm going to do. But then it turns out that the villages in Sonipat are not really ready for that conversation. Of course, I should, continue to work with them to make them ready for that conversation.
Yes.
But let's say if child marriage is an issue and that is something that they need support on, let's say annulment of child marriage, then that is what I need to work on. So I think navigating that space is difficult, but it's also extremely important, right? And I think another major issue is obviously funding. I think we are so blessed at Jindal that our vice chancellor and our law school has also provided the legal aid clinics with 2 lawyers, and we're able to really do all of this work because of the support that we have. But I think it's so important to also generate individual funding for the clinic, because that is really how you will be able to effectuate larger and better change. So I think those are 2 major issues. And other than that, I think also acclimatizing yourself to the space that you're working in. Because, for example, I practiced in Delhi. I was representing child sexual abuse survivors in Delhi. If I filed an interim compensation, let's say today, I would get my interim compensation today or by the next date. But now, whereas going into Sonipat, where everyone told us do not file this application, the public prosecutor opposed our interim compensation application. You cannot go into it thinking that things will work the same way, right? So I think it's really important to work with the people who are already working in the area that you're going to step into, and understand from them that how it is that things work in that space, and also accordingly change the way that you work. I never thought I would have to go to the High Court for an interim compensation application, but we had to do that. The adjudication took over 7 months. Thanks to one of our alumnus, Rishabh, who supported us pro bono, we were able to go to the High Court for speedy adjudication of our application, and it finally got decided. So I think these are some of the things that we really do need to keep in mind as we go through. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
All right.
It was really a pleasure interviewing you.
Thank you. So great speaking to all of you. Let me know if you all need any other help or support. I'm happy to help in any way.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Sure,
Ma'am.
ma'am.
All right. Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day too.
एक मिनट में भैया
हाँ.
सो